Hello, Awakened Dark Knight. I am Rinku Talks, and I'm here to help you master your Awakening skills. Whether you've been waiting on Xbox for the Awakening release, or even if you're new to PC looking for a skill build, the skills are all the same, and this video should be able to help. I'm going to go over all of the Awakening skills, and what you should unlock and upgrade at every level from level 56 through 60, as well as absolute skills and enhanced skills, also known as your bombs. But first, let's talk about the Awakening skills that you don't want. You can see here I've reset all of my skills, and we're on the Awakening tab. The first skill that you do not want is Hallucination Gap. Hallucination Gap is much like the pre-awakening skill Split Second, except if you read the fine print, it only stiffens in PvE. This means whether you PvE or PvP, you'll probably never use the skill. Another skill that should never be used is Vediant Training. Although it's unlocked and upgraded automatically, it's quite literally just our left click. Touch of Exploitation is like your left click, but a little bit fancier. And just like your left click, should never be used. Soul Snatch works the same way as your pre-awakening skill Pervasive Darkness, except it's not protected and it doesn't debuff your target, making it kind of useless. Flow Spirit Blaze is actually our level 60 flow and functions as a single sword swipe. It's a flow of Spirit Blaze because normally it would activate after the 2 hits from Spirit Blaze, but when quick slotted, you can actually use the flow of Spirit Blaze on its own. The flow is basically a slow knockdown, kind of like Combustion Slash, but without the charge up. Flow Spirit Blaze used to be a staple for Dark Knight PvP builds until they took away the protection. Because they took away the forward guard from the slow skill, which leaves you wide open, it's no longer recommended for any Dark Knight to use. The only thing to mention about Cluster of Despair is that it debuffs your opponent with minus 25% movement speed for 10 seconds, but I have never seen a Dark Knight use this skill effectively. Grip of Grudge. While it looks cool, it's pretty much useless in most situations. An argument can be made that being able to spin your mobs 180 degrees to continue your combo with back attacks would be ideal for PvE, but there are very few places in the game where you can grind effectively without 1 to 2 shotting the mobs that you're grinding on, making this kind of useless. Lastly, I want to mention Spirit Blaze now because for PvE, you do not want this skill. However, this is the one and only skill in Awakening that I'm going to consider PvP only. While you don't want to intentionally go out of your way to use the skill, it activates with the same button combination as Enforcement, and even functions the same, with having a float on the second hit. Basically, if you're trying to combo and intend on using Enforcement for the CC, but you're stuck in Awakening, you don't have to drop your combo or think about what else to do. You can just use Spirit Blaze to accomplish the same thing. I believe Enforcement is still preferred because then you could finish your combo in an absolute pre-awakening skill, but Spirit Blaze is a great alternative. Now, as long as you don't get any of the skills that we just talked about, besides maybe Spirit Blaze, you can pretty much unlock and upgrade all your other Awakening skills as you level up. I'm going to assume that you're using my pre-awakening Essentials skill build, which is less than 300 skill points, or at the very least, you have your pre-awakening skills set up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in my last video, the pre-awakening recap, I created a skill build of essential skills I would recommend for when you get your awakening, as well as referenced all the pre-awakening information you could possibly need. The link to that video, the 300 SP skill build, and all the other skill builds that we make in this video will be linked in the description down below. With my essential pre-awakening skills unlocked, I'm going to pretend I just got my awakening at level 56. The first thing I would notice is that I can now change into the awakening stance with this skill, also known as our C-swap. I'd also see that I have a very powerful 30-second buff that has a 3-minute cooldown, also known as our E-buff. The terms C-swap and E-buff are based on what key you have to press to activate them on PC, and are used for most of the classes, as well as your S-block and Q-block. The first skill to unlock is literally your side dash, Dusk and Chain Dusk, but Dusk Hallucination allows you to use them in Awakening. Spirit Hunt is a fast attack that you can consider a movement skill. It's also a protected CC with super armor and stiffen effects. Spirit Hunt is one of 2 awakening skills that can be used in pre-awakening, and after being used, you will be left in your awakening stance. Shattering Darkness is your main range skill used mostly for kiting your opponent. It does not have a CC, but it is protected with forward guard. With enough AP, this can seriously chunk your opponent, and like a lot of Dark Knight skills, also moves you in a direction when used. Shattering Darkness actually moves you back from wherever your camera is pointing and up in the air at the same time. Seed of Catastrophe is your second range skill, and although not protected, it's used more for its CC of stiffness. You can start a combo from the skill, but it is very difficult. It should be mentioned that Shattering Darkness and Seed of Catastrophe are Dark Knight's bread and butter. When it comes to one-shotting a pack of mobs in the distance, or kiting your opponent in PvP, these skills are our top priority. This is also because at level 57 and 58, your flows are based on these skills. Spirit Legacy is our heavy hitter and even our ulti. While the ultimate version should not be used, the base skill is a very important asset to our Awakening kit. While you could spam the skill on cooldown, it's best used off cooldown when its damage is comparable to Wheel of Fortune and Lunacy of Vedir. In addition to that, it's also protected with a forward guard and can CC with the stun. Oh, and did I mention that this also debuffs your target with minus 20 DP for 10 seconds, making its debuff twice as effective as the one in pre-awakening from the skill Pervasive Darkness. Yeah, this skill is the definition of essential. And I just want to clarify, the stun is only PvE, feels bad man, but that's how it is. Last but not least, let's get Twilight Dash, a movement skill that actually does a lot of damage. It hits multiple times throughout the animation, and the second half of the animation is only activated if you hold F. This is so if you want a short, fast movement, you could just tap F instead of holding it. Or you could hold F for the full duration and do maximum damage. Keep in mind that Twilight Dash is no longer protected like it was on DK's PC launch. At level 57, like I was just saying, all you need is Flow Bombardment. Flow Bombardment is the flow for Shattering Darkness and can be used after Shattering Darkness, Seed of Catastrophe, or the flow Root of Catastrophe, which is the next skill that we'll talk about. Just like Shattering Darkness, the flow Bombardment pushes you up into the air, but changes direction depending on what buttons are pressed. I'm sure you want to spend all your extra skill points on pre-awakening upgrades and passives now, especially when you see how little skill points you need at level 57, but trust me when I say you'll need a lot more for level 58, because there are a lot of upgrades. We have a lot to do, but of course we're going to start with the flow. Root of Catastrophe is the flow for Seed of Catastrophe and can be used after either Seed of Catastrophe or Flow Bombardment. While Seed of Catastrophe keeps you standing in place, the flow Root of Catastrophe pushes you either forward or backwards depending on what buttons are used to activate it. If you use the same buttons as Seed of Catastrophe, then the flow Root of Catastrophe will activate and you'll move towards where the camera is pointing. If you use the other option of buttons, you'll move backwards from where the camera is pointing. Oh, and again at level 58 we also want to upgrade Spirit Hunt, and Shattering Darkness, and Seed of Catastrophe, oh, and Spirit Legacy. Altogether is a lot of skill points compared to what you needed at level 57. Assuming you can budget your skill points for all the skills that we've gone over up to level 58, now would be the time to actually invest in passives and other pre-awakening upgrades to help you do some more damage. Although keep in mind that there is still more to go for at level 59 and 60. At level 59 we get Trap of Vedir, which is the last awakening skill to go over, and it's actually quite useful. This is our second awakening skill that you can use in pre-awakening to not only use the skill, but also to put you into the awakening stance afterwards. Trap of Vedir pushes you backwards from where the camera is pointing. It does damage and stuns where you were originally standing, however it is not protected. Trap of Vedir also debuffs your targets with minus 15% evasion for 10 seconds, making this skill very useful for both PvE and PvP. Again, at level 59, you also want to keep upgrading Spirit Hunt and Seed of Catastrophe. And at level 60, all you need to do is top off your last three skills, which is Shattering Darkness, Seed of Catastrophe again, and Spirit Legacy. That's pretty much it for awakening skills. Back in the pre-awakening tab, you have your passives Spirit Combustion, Infinite Mastery, and Skilled Hunter, all of which should be upgraded and maxed after your essential skills. If you have access to the absolute skill upgrades, and enough skill points to upgrade them, you should upgrade all the skills that you already use. The main two being Absolute Lunacy of Vedir at level 59, and Absolute Wheel of Fortune at level 60. Normally, you would unlock your first Bomb at level 56 and your second Bomb at level 57, but as a Dark Knight, I feel like that would be a waste of skill points. I highly recommend finishing your skill build before wasting skill points on your bombs. Dark Knight's skill enhancements, or rebomb skills, are pretty underwhelming compared to other classes. Even these passives I just got are more important. For the level 56 rebomb, you're going to want Shadow Strike, which requires Shadow Bullet level 2. Then we just learn it, and there we go. Shadow Strike is a very fast, ranged attack that can be used to last hit an opponent, or for an animation cancel during combos. For the level 57 rebomb, if you had to choose between the two, the one to choose is Obsidian Blaze. And to unlock it, we're going to need level 5 of Obsidian Ashes. The reasoning behind Obsidian Blaze is basically that it's a weaker Wheel of Fortune that only floats in PvE. But what's important is that it still has super armor. While it's not really good to use by itself, you could use it to play mind games in PvP. If your opponent is waiting for you to use Wheel of Fortune before going in, and you use Obsidian Blaze, which looks almost exactly the same, he's probably going to be confused when you bust out a Wheel of Fortune and one combo him. Keep in mind that they do slightly look different, with Obsidian Blaze having more of a purple lightning effect, but it's very, very hard to tell. While Shadow Strike has a magic DP plus 15 buff for 10 seconds, and Obsidian Blaze has that PvE float, these could be useful skills for PvE, I just don't find myself using them for PvE. I feel like they're more PvP oriented and work really well in an arena setting. Wow, we have come a long way. With our essential pre-awakening skills, such as Dusk, Chain Dusk, we even have Pervasive Darkness, Enforcement with the Flow, Smoky Haze, Lunacy of Vedir, and Wheel of Fortune, as well as a maxed out Awakening build. We even have our bombs and our 2 best absolutes. So, what's next? Well, if you really have more skill points to spend, there's only 2 things left to do. The first is unlock our PvP skills if you ever want to PvP. We're going to start with Split Second. We also have Nocturne, and of course I was talking earlier about the regular Spirit Blaze. Honestly, the only thing left to do is to upgrade all our pre-awakening skills that we use but haven't maxed yet, such as the rest of our absolutes. As you can see, my unused skill points are getting pretty low, but I had enough to fully complete my skill build. There isn't a single skill I want that I don't already have, except for maybe this one, just to make you guys happy. We'll put that right over here. And yeah, job done. Let me know if you use Hidden Strike in the comments, and also what you thought about this overall video. This is only the beginning of my Dark Knight Awakening content. As always, I love you, and I'll see you next time.